Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Kandy Technical Fireside Chat. Today, we're going to be talking about Kandy troubleshooting tips and tricks. This is kind of a refresher on some content that we did a few years ago. So we may reference that previous video at a couple of points in this session. Let me start by introducing you to Dave Fowler and Sarah Hughes, who will be assisting me on this call today. Answering questions and things of that nature. My name's Simon LeGood. I'm the Senior Technical Trainer here at Kandy, and I'm kind of walking you through as we go through things today. All right, so first things first, just to kind of show you kind of what we're going to cover today, the first thing that we wanted to talk about is opening up a support case. So we'll spend some time going through the support portal. I'll show you how to open up a case. We'll talk about what the different severity levels mean. We'll add in some additional things. We'll talk about adding attachments to tickets and all of those fun things as well. And then what we'll do at the second half of the session today is we will go through some of the troubleshooting tools that are available to you inside of the Kandy admin portal. We'll go through a line trace. We'll talk about registration queries, when to use force deregistration. We'll also talk about SIP captures and how you can pull them and how you can use those as well. The first thing that we're going to talk about is, like I said, going through the support portal. Before we get into the support portal, all of this is documented inside of the Kandy support process. So if you are in the partner portal, you can do a quick search for KBS support process. And there's a full document in here that goes into details about how to use the support portal, how to use the different troubleshooting tools, all of those kinds of things. What you'll see on this slide is just kind of a summary of the table of contents in this guide. So you'll see it does cover roles and responsibilities for Tier 1 and Tier 2. It goes into registration and call processing. So this is where you can find information about SIP captures, registration issues. We do talk about log capture, opening cases, change requests, all of those kinds of things inside of this document. So if you haven't or not familiar with that document, it is a very good resource for you guys to go through and to consume. So again, that is on the Kandy Partner Portal. So in the search box, you can just type in KBS support process and it'll come right. The next thing that I wanted to show you, so again, going into the partner portal to get to the support tool, so where you're going to go to actually open up a case if there's an issue with the Kandy support team. In the partner portal, you can click on the support box in the center of the screen. That is going to take you into a screen under cases. You'll see Kandy support portal. And then you'll click on the click here to log in screen, and that will take you over to our support portal area. Now that does currently require a second set of credentials. So if you don't already have those, I would recommend reaching out to the customer success team and we can get you credentials so that you can open up cases as needed. Once you do log into this portal, again, it's a separate set of credentials from your partner portal. You will be presented with the screen that you're seeing on the screenshot here. Essentially what this is giving you is all of the information that you need if you needed to make a phone call to the Kandy support team, gives you all of our hours of operation, in terms of severity level. So for severity 1, that's the most critical issues. We are 24/7. For non-outage situations, so severity 2 through 4, it is 8 to 6 in your local time zone. So, again, we are staffed globally, so it's 8 to 6 in your local time zone. Once you get into the customer portal, there's a couple of different areas. So at the top, you have a toolbar. This is where your home button is, which is going to take you to the screenshot you're seeing at the top of the screen. The My Cases area is where you can go to not only open up a case, but it's where you can also view your historical case information. So if you needed to go and look at a past ticket, or you wanted to search for an issue that perhaps you had in the past, that's where you can go to do that. The Kandy documentation link is going to take you back over to the documentation area within the partner portal. So if you accidentally close that tab or something like that, you can quickly click Kandy documentation to go back there. The search box, this is a pretty powerful search box. So not only is it going to allow you to search for tickets, but depending on, and you'll see in just a minute when we talk about opening up a case, if you're using fields like the customer ticket number or the customer name, this search box will search for all of those things too. So if you have an internal ticket number that you include in your ticket to Kandy support, you search for those in this box as well. And then the drop down on the right hand side is where you can go to log out of the system and make some modifications to your profile email address and things of that nature. Digging in a little bit deeper here, so if we go into the My Cases section, this is what you would expect to see. So the very first screen that we're seeing is a list of My Open Cases. So these are troubleshooting cases that you have opened up with the Kandy support team that are not in a closed status, right? So anything that is still currently open. You can quickly go through here, you can click on them as if you needed to view a ticket, see an update, if you're wanting to add notes to the ticket, add an attachment to the ticket, all of those things. What you'll also notice, again, in the top left-hand corner, there is a drop-down filter. So by default, it's My Open Cases, but if you were to click that drop-down, you can view your closed cases, you can view all cases, which is going to be, organization-wide. So if you needed to see a ticket that somebody else on your team opened up, you could look in the All Cases area and find those tickets as well. From there, up in the top right-hand corner of the My Cases section is a button that says New. Once you click on that New button, it is going to open up a new web applet. This web applet is going to give you the ability to go in and open up a new case with the Kandy support team. And we'll talk about some of this, some of the things that you should include in a later slide. But the more information you can provide us here, the more likely we are going to be able to immediately start working on your issue, right? So I've got a slide later on, we'll talk about some of the things to include in this ticket. But again, the more details you can provide, the better off we're going to be. So the subject, again, is just it's a brief summary of what's happening. In the description field, this is where you want to go into as many details as possible. So this is where you're going to tell us phone numbers. This is where you're going to tell us, specifically what's happening, how to reproduce the issue, all of those kinds of things. The impact field, this is a field that's not a required field, but it is very beneficial. So if you're having an issue with a particular line, putting something in there like, this is the CEO's line, or this particular line is our main telephone number. Those kinds of things will help us kind of understand why you've selected the severity that you've selected, and help us kind of start working on the issue, or understanding the scope of the issue as we get into it. The next box down you're going to see is severity. So there are 4 different severities that are available, starting at 1 being a critical outage type situation, and then scaling back all the way to 4. While we don't generally define what each individual level is, what I can tell you is, again, severity 1 means it's a critical level issue, something that needs to get addressed immediately. Whereas a severity 4 is going to be something more along the lines of a general question. Maybe you need a document, can't find a document or something like that, and you just want to open up a case to get it. For severity 1 level issues, it will let you select it in the drop down here. However, when you go to save, it will require that you actually give us a call. So anytime you're reporting a severity 1 outage, we do ask that you give us a call so that we can immediately start working on that. rather than, waiting for the ticket to come in and all of those kinds of things, right? We want to know about it as soon as you're reporting it so that we can get all the details that we need from you and go ahead and start working towards a resolution. What you'll notice next to the severity box is the end customer box. So this is a good place for you to put in your end customer, so the name of the customer. Again, it's not a required field, but again, for searching purposes and things like that, this will help you in the long run if you start to include the end customers here. The next one is solution. So this is which Kandy product case is in reference to. So if you're reporting an issue with, UCAS, or if you're reporting an issue with any of the other products and services that Kandy offers, it's a good idea to go ahead and select that so that we can get it to the appropriate teams. Once you select a solution, you'll then go under the services box and you can specify a bit more with what's going on. So if you've selected UCAS, maybe you're having an issue with the DID, or maybe you're having a voicemail problem or something of that nature. So the services area will give you the ability to make those selections. The customer ticket number field is used primarily by you so that you can include your own internal ticket numbers. That way, when you come back to look for a ticket later on, you can just search for your own internal ticket number, and you don't have to worry about, trying to remember what the Kandy ticket number was, or what the specific situation was, so that you can find the ticket. If you include your customer ticket number or your internal ticket number in our ticket, you can always search for your internal ticket number. The last field, so this isn't a field that you can edit, but it's the case owner. So whoever opened up the ticket will be listed as the case owner. And then directly below that, there's some additional fields that are internal use only, one of which is required, but it's already defaulted to the open status, which is what you want it to be. Once you've completed all of this, again, giving us as much detail as we possibly, or you possibly can at the beginning of this, you can go ahead and hit save. Once you hit save, that will go ahead and generate a ticket number for you. So you'll have a new case number, and it will show in your My Open Cases section. Once you open up that ticket, what you'll see is all the details of your ticket. So you can see what it was you typed in as the description. Over on the right-hand side is where all the work notes are. So this is how you'll communicate back and forth with the Kandy support team. In the screenshot that you're seeing here, there aren't any notes, but if you wanted to add a note, you can click on the new note option. By clicking on new note, it will give you the ability to come in here and type in and save a note back to the support team. What you're seeing here in box 2 is an example of what it looks like when the support team does go through and add a note to your ticket. These do come to you via email if you've got the emails and notifications enabled. So you don't have to come in here to see if there's been an update. It should come to you via email as well. In addition to the notes section, so when you first go into a ticket, you're over here on the details tab. What you can do is actually switch over to the related tab, and this will give you the ability to add attachment to your ticket. So if you have something like a PCAP query, or maybe there's a screenshot that you need to include, or a log file, or any of those kinds of things, we do recommend that you come over here to the related tab, and this will give you the ability to upload an attachment. So if you think there's something that would be beneficial for the support team to have their hands on or be able to use when troubleshooting, definitely go ahead and attach that to the ticket so that we can, again, start working on this immediately. All right, now what I want to do is go ahead and I've got the partner portal up. So just to show you real quick, if I type in KBS support, you'll see the KBS support process is one of the documents that immediately comes up. If I click into that, I can click to download that file. So it will open up in a new page. And again, this is the overall document that you can certainly look through. In addition to that, if I come back out to the partner portal, I can go into the support tab or the support section. This will open up to the cases area. I can click on Kandy support portal and then click to log into the support portal itself. I'm going to log in as a demo account here. And again, this is what the Kandy support portal looks like. So on the main screen here, we have all of the contact information for access or calling our technical support team, hours of operation. If I come over here to my cases, what you'll see is just a list of all of the cases that we've opened up. Again, this particular example is just a test environment where we open up random cases. So yours would look slightly different than this. Yours would have legitimate case information in here. The filters up at the top, if I click the drop down, I can cycle through all of the various filters that are available to you. So again, if I wanted to look for a case that was opened by somebody else, I could come into all cases. If I click into the new area, this is where I'm going to be able to open up a new case with the Kandy support team. And again, I'm not going to go through all of these fields because we did just talk about them. The one I do want to show you, so again, I was talking about the solution drop down. So if I come in here and I select UCAS as the solution as an example, once I populate that, I can then choose from a more specific list on the services drop down here. So you can see they are interdependent with one another. Once I've opened up that case, I can just go ahead and hit save, and that will open up the case with the support team. If I were to come into an existing ticket, so we saw earlier, I was telling you about the details tab. This is just where all of the information is going to be located. The right of details, you have a related tab, and this is where you can come to upload an additional file. PCAP queries, SIP captures, all of those kinds of things would be very beneficial to include. All right, Sarah and David, do we have any questions about this before we move on to some of the troubleshooting tools?
There was one about tagging other people to a ticket. And that is something, I think that's the collaborate option that we had previously. No, it's not follow. It's there in the ribbon implementation, we had a collaborate button. That is something that we're looking at doing. We haven't done it yet, but that, as well as making sure if you have a like a not distribution list, an NOC, or a support at your domain or something like that, tagging where everybody's on that. Those are a couple of things that we're looking at adding to the ticketing system, but at present it's not available.
Awesome, thank you. All right, well, we can continue on then. Again, the next section that we're going to go into is some of the troubleshooting tools. So to give you guys kind of an idea, to get into the troubleshooting section, so this is in the Kandy admin, right? So where you go to configure all of your customers. There's 5 different troubleshooting tools that are available to you. The first one is more, we are going to request that you run these when you're having issues, repeatable issues, things like that. And that's going to be a line trace. Essentially what this does is it based on the parameter things that you put in, it's going to go through and run a detailed capture or trace of that particular call. It's going to give the Kandy support team a deeper look at what's happening, and it even gives kind of that code level view of what's happening on the back end. It's not something that you're going to be able to see on the front end, but again, this file does help our Kandy support team in terms of trying to troubleshoot and figure out what exactly is causing problems that you're running into. So we're going to define these, and then I'll show you kind of what they look like as well. The next one down is going to be registration query. So again, this is a great tool for you guys to look at. So if you're having issues with, perhaps a phone not being able to make calls, or there's some sort of issue going on there, you can run a registration query. What this does is it queries the call server and gives you a view as to which devices are registered for a particular subscriber on the call server. So something to keep in mind there is that it is registered or looking at the call server. It's not looking at the SBC. So even if you've unplugged a device, that device may continue to show up on the call server until that expire timer degrades, so up to an hour. Course deregistration, we'll talk about this one a little bit more. Essentially what this tool does is it unregisters devices or all devices for a particular subscriber from the call server. And David, I'm sure, would shoot me if I didn't tell you this. We would recommend that you really only use this particular tool when in conjunction with the support team. So if the support team is asking you to unregister all the devices, that's really the only time that you would need to do so. The SIP capture, so this does perform a SIP capture, so it gives you a PCAP file that you can use to then use a packet analysis tool like Wireshark or any of the others to go through and actually see the SIP messaging for a particular call or for a particular registration. So this is a very incredibly powerful tool. You can look at single call, you can look at domain wide. So, really it is a great tool for you to be able to use. And then the last one, we're not going to go into this one on this call, but the last one is translate trace. Essentially what this does is it gives you the ability to query the system to see if a particular subscriber has a route out to a particular telephone number. So this can be used, if a subscriber is having issues reaching a particular telephone number, or if they can't make a phone call to, long distance or something like that. You do have the ability of going in and run a translate trace, and it'll tell you whether or not there is a route available. These issues could be caused from anything from a call permissions problem in the subscriber itself. Maybe they've only got the ability to make internal calls from a subscriber perspective, but it could also be something a bit more global than that, right? Perhaps if this is a new customer, there was no route built for, when you were going through the CIQ process, which could mean, they're dialing 9 or something to make an outbound call and it's not required. So that's what the translate trace does, is it gives you the ability to see whether or not that particular subscriber should be able to make that type of call. Before we get into the individual tools, so now that we've kind of defined what they were, I did want to go in and give you kind of a general understanding as to what you should include when you're opening up a ticket with the Kandy support team. So by no means is this an all-inclusive list, right? But we tried to go through and come up with at least somewhat of a list for you to kind of use as a checklist when you're opening up a case. The first and foremost thing, and I think you guys probably already know this, right? Try and reproduce the issue before you're opening up a case. If this was a one-time issue or something that happens very infrequently, it's going to be difficult for us to really go in and troubleshoot it. So I would definitely try and reproduce the issue. If you're able to, if it's something that is repeatable, it is something that happens on a regular basis, go ahead and capture a line trace. And we'll talk about how to capture a line trace here in just a moment. But again, that is something that the support team's gonna request. So you may as well go ahead and run that line trace and then give that file name in your ticket. Right, say I've already gone ahead and opened up a line trace. Here's the ticket number, and I'll show you where to get that information. If you can run a SIP capture, that's always a handy tool. If it's more of a phone problem, right, including the log files from the phone or the devices, excuse me, from the device itself, including all the call details, right? So the time of the call, originating phone number, terminating phone number. The more information you give us, the better off we are going to be, right? So the more information you give us on the front end, we can go ahead and start working on the issue, come up with a resolution, and it's gonna result in a faster turnaround time for you and your customer. Right, the whole goal here is to not disrupt their processes and their day-to-day routines. So the more information you can give us at the front end, we can go ahead and start working on it from a support perspective, and then get back to you with either potential resolution or things of that nature. So again, the more information you can provide us at the front end, the better off everybody's going to be. Another one I didn't mention while we were going through this, the steps to reproduce the issue is also very valuable, right? So if it's something that is repeatable, right, how are you getting that result? Is it a particular number calling? Is it a particular button configuration that's happening? You know, is this happening only when you're transferring telephone calls, or if you put somebody on hold and you resume them from hold, or whatever's happening, whatever steps need to be taken to reproduce those issues. All right, so the first tool that we're going to look at is the line trace. Again, we've talked briefly about this. Essentially what this does is it runs a line trace on the back end and gives you the ability, or gives the Kandy support team the ability to not only see the call, but it also gives us a code level view of what's going on that call. So it's not a file that you would necessarily be able to see, but it is something that does help our support team, and it is something that they are going to request. Essentially, the way you would use this tool is it does come up, it's going to ask you for the dial number. This isn't really looking necessarily for a telephone number. You can certainly type in a telephone number here, but it is just doing a string lookup in the SIP messaging, trying to determine or trying to look for the information for that trace. So you'll see in the example on the right, I've got the last 7 digits of the telephone number I was calling. I also included my user ID, right? So if I'm calling, you know, perhaps I'm calling a telephone number that is frequently called from that customer by multiple people, but this one user is having a problem, right? I can include, you know, a good portion of the telephone number, and then I can also include that particular user's subscriber ID or user ID, so that it only is looking for information from that particular. Again, you can certainly include the full telephone number, but certainly the last 6 or 7 digits of the phone number is what we would recommend including. So again, the very last thing here, you can do multiple matches. So if you wanted to be more specific, right, you can include telephone number and then a comma and then user ID to be more specific with what you're including in the trace. Once you're going through and running this trace, what you'll see is you'll click set up trace over on the right hand side after typing in your information in the dial digits. You'll then hit start trace. What you're going to notice is that this line captured should increment some. So you can see in my example, it incremented to about 20. It may go more than that, and that's totally fine. once it's kind of started incrementing, that's when you're going to go ahead and reproduce whatever the problem is, right? So you're going to call the telephone number, you're going to go through and do whatever it is that you need to do to recreate that problem. As you're recreating the problem, it's incredibly important that you see this line captures increment as you're making the phone call or whatever it is that's happening. You can see in this example, right, we went up from 21 to over 26,000, right? So it should increment by thousands of lines. And that's indicating to you that you have in fact gotten the information that you're looking for. If for whatever reason it isn't incrementing, it means you're not capturing anything. So that is a very important line for you to be able to recognize. Once you're done, you can hit stop trace, and in this section here where it says file name, it'll give you the file name to include in your trouble ticket. All right, so let's go in and I will show you kind of what it's like in real time. So again, to get into the troubleshooting tools, you're going to go into account and then to debug. And then over on the right-hand side, the first one that we're going to talk about is the line trace. So once I've chosen line trace, over on the left-hand side, I've got my status and I've got my dial number. So I'm going to type in the last four of my phone number, or sorry, the last 7 of my phone number. Then I'm also going to include my user ID. Once I've done that, over on the right-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and click Setup Trace. You'll see it has gone ahead and set everything up. I've got my file name here. I can see it's gone ahead and started capturing some lines, and that's just the initial lines that it takes to set up the trace itself. Now, if I were to go on my phone and actually make a telephone call to my cell phone, what you'll see is we should start.
You didn't hit start.
That's a very good point. Hitting start is a very valid problem. All right, so let's go ahead and start this. And we'll do it again. So my line captured right now is at 65. Again, if I go ahead and dial this number, what you'll notice is as that call was going through, you saw that the lines captured started to increment here. If I can go ahead and hang up the phone call now, you'll see it again continues to increment. It's pulling all the remaining pair down of the call. I can go ahead and hit stop trace at this point. And then this number right here, this file name right here is what I would then want to go and include with my support ticket. That's going to give the support team all of the information that they need for that trace. All right, the next that we're going to talk about is the registration query. The registration query, again, it is also in the debug section of the Kandy admin. Essentially what this does is it looks up and displays all of the registrations for a given user on the call server. Again, it is important to understand that this is looking at the call server. So even if you've unplugged a device, right, it's going to wait until that registration timer expires before falling off this list. So the default time there is 1 hour that the call server is looking for additional registrations. Keep in mind the registration expire timer on the SBC is much shorter than that. So, you know, these phones do register more frequently than that, but the call server sets that expire timer for about an hour. So as you're going through and doing these registration queries, just keep that in mind. It is from the call server's perspective. But what this is going to do is it's going to give you the ability to see all of the various devices that are registered to this particular subscriber. So you can see what phones they're using, if they've got desktop clients, if they've got any of those other things set up on the system. You use this tool, it is very easy. You just type in the user ID for the particular subscriber, and then you'll hit query registration. What that's going to do is then display what you're seeing here on the screen. So I just ran one on my corporate line. You'll see there is a Yealink device connected, and I can see what the expire timer is, again, from the call server perspective, right? So this isn't what the phone's necessarily doing. This is from the call server perspective. And really the stuff down below is the same information. We've just kind of made it a bit more pretty at the top so that it's easier to read through.
Hey, one point I'd want to add before you move on. The
Sure.
expires timer here is actually important. If you ever see expires equals 0, it means you have a device that did not unregister, but it stopped registering at some point. So if you unplug a phone, when the registration expires on the call server, it will still show up in the list, but it'll have an expires equals 0. So if you have expires equals 0, it doesn't mean that it's registered. It actually means that it quit registering and didn't unregister, but that phone is no longer registering, but it will still show up on the list.
That's a great point. Thanks, David. And then the other thing to keep in mind here, right, and this does come up with certain troubleshooting or certain issues that you may experience, but one subscriber can have up to 10 different devices registered to them. So especially when we're talking about troubleshooting issues with like ALG or any of those kinds of things, there is a potential that one device could potentially register multiple times, and that would obviously then fill up and you would start receiving error messages saying that the device can't register, right? There's too many devices registered. So coming in here and looking at this registration query can certainly help you out. We've tried to take as many things as we can on our end to kind of help mitigate some of that. But again, if you're seeing the same device registering multiple times, it could be an indication that there's a networking level problem there at that customer's location. So definitely something to kind of keep an eye on and use in your in the conjunction with other troubleshooting as well. Once again, just to kind of look at that. So again, under debug, come on now, don't focus on me. There we go. You have your registration query. If I come in here, I can type in my user ID. Once I've typed in my user ID, I can go ahead and hit query registration. And very similarly, you'll see the one device that I currently have connected to my particular DID. All right. The next tool that we're going to look at is forced deregistration. So essentially,
we do have one question. Hold on just a second. Is there a reason to leave those in that list at expired equals 0 instead of having them depopulate? I guess maybe that's for Dave. Oh,
Yeah, I just put an answer in there. It's it's not something we have control over. The call server, when you do a registration query, includes ones that expired, but it only removes it from the list if it unregisters. So it's not something that we have any control over.
Okay, thank you.
Are we okay to continue? All right, so forced deregistration. So again, what forced deregistration does is it clears all of the registrations for a given user on the call server. The reason that this, is a beneficial thing, right, is that there may be a situation where we do want to clear out the registrations that are on that call server. Kind of briefly talked about this before, but especially when you're troubleshooting things like ALG, if that register is coming in on a different source port each time, it's possible that the SBC could interpret that as a new device, and then it would then pass it along to the call server as a new device being registered. As I mentioned before, you can have 10 devices registered to a particular subscriber before it basically says, no, you can't have any more devices registered to you. And that would come in the form of a 403 message saying login limit exceeded. Essentially what it's telling you is you've got too many devices connected and it's not going to let you connect anymore. So just something to kind of keep in mind. This deregister all devices tool would then allow for you to go through and remove those previous registrations. Keep in mind that's not going to solve your problem. It may temporarily solve the problem, but if you haven't corrected the network level problem or whatever's causing multiple devices to be registered, the same device to be registered multiple times with the call server, it's just going to fill up again and you're going to have the same problem, once those registrations do reach the limit. So we would strongly recommend that you only ever use the force deregister in conjunction with something that the support team's asking you to do. That way we, are sure that you're not just putting a Band-Aid on the problem, right? It's actually being addressed, and things are getting fixed. Again, on this one, I'm not going to run a force deregistration, but I will show you where it's at. So again, under the select tools, we can go into force deregistration. I would type in the user ID that I would like, and then I can do a deregister all devices. Essentially what that's going to do is it's going to remove all the registrations, if you were to then run a registration query, you'd see the list was clear. And then as soon as you reboot the phone or you restart the soft client or whatever device you're using, it would go through that registration process again. So. The next one we're going to look at is SIP captures. So SIP captures, there's actually a couple of different tools in here, as I mentioned earlier. Essentially what this does is it, from the Kandy admin portal, when you go into the SIP capture section, it performs a series of API calls to pull back all of the SIP messaging related to a particular call or for a particular registration or whatever it is that you're running a SIP capture on. Now, one thing that I do like to point out to folks here is that obviously privacy is important. You wouldn't want your data to be included in a report to another partner or vice versa, right? So as a part of this tool, we do scrub the data to ensure that we're not passing out information that shouldn't be included in the report, and that we are only providing you the data that is relevant to your particular customer. So keep that in mind. We do try and include as much information as possible, but we do limit the scope of these reports to only include things that wouldn't be considered, privileged information for other partners. So to use this tool, essentially, you're going to come in here, you're going to go to the select tools section, you're going to choose SIP capture. From there, you have the ability in the select query operation to choose either single user registration, domain-wide registration, single user call, or domain-wide call. Once you've made that selection, if it's a single user, you'll select the user ID from the list that you're looking for and click on submit query. The domain-wide ones aren't going to require that you select a user ID. Again, it's pulling domain-wide information. So if you're using one of the single user options, it'll ask you which user you want to look at. The domain-wide ones, obviously, you would just hit submit query. Once you do make your selection on the user ID, it's going to come up and ask you for a date and time stamp. There is an option to choose the last 10 minutes, but essentially the time range that you're looking for here, or that you're wanting to include, is when the error or whenever the problem occurred, right? So if that was within the past 10 minutes, that's great. If it was an hour ago, I would try and narrow it down to, maybe a 10 or 15-minute window on when that occurred. The more information you try, or the longer the time that you're pulling these SIP captures for, it's going to put strain on the server. It's going to take longer to run the report, and you may not get the information that you're looking for. We would highly encourage you to try and keep it to about a 10-minute window, 15 minutes kind of tops, on when that issue occurred. Once you've selected that start and end time, you can then select your time zone. So again, this is the local time zone. And you'd hit your submit query button. Once you've hit submit query, it should come up at the top saying so many packets were captured. And then it should automatically start downloading a file for you to then be able to view. On the next screen, I've given you a bit more information on the various types that, or the query operations that you can look at. So again, there's single user registration. So if a user can't make or receive calls, it could help you kind of determine what the issue is. Perhaps there's an error in the registration process. Single user calls. So anytime you're troubleshooting a calling issue to or from a single user, so drop calls, incomplete calls, all of those kinds of things. Domain-wide registration and domain-wide calls, those are going to be less frequent that you're going to want to pull those. Generally, if you kind of have an idea that there may be some sort of networking level problem, that's when the domain-wide options are going to come into play. Over the right-hand side, this is just an example of a SIP trace. So this is a ladder diagram showing you all of the different SIP signaling for this particular call. This is just one of the PCAPs that I pulled earlier, so that you can kind of see how that looks. Again, if I go into the Kandy admin tool here, again, come over to select tools, I can come to SIP capture. And this is going to give me the ability to go in, and again, I can use single user registration, single user call, domain-wide registration, or domain-wide call. If I do single user registration, just as an example, I can go ahead and once again type in my user ID in the search. I'll select me from the list. This is when it's going to come up. It's going to ask me for the start and end time. I'm, in this example, just going to choose the last 10 minutes. I'm going to keep my time zone selected here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit submit query. You see it does come back. It's giving me 66 packets. and it downloaded the PCAP file. Now, this would be, again, one of those things that I would certainly recommend that you include in your support ticket. So under this related, again, this is where you go and upload it in the system as well. And then again, once you've got that PCAP file, you can certainly use the information in that. If you open it up using Wireshark or any of those packet analysis tools, it will give you the information that you're looking for. All right, that does kind of cover everything that we wanted to talk about today. Were there any additional questions that we wanted to address in the chat?
There was one earlier question about the SIP capture, whether or not it captured subscribe notifies for things like BLF. And the answer is no. However, the support team has access to those messages for up to 5 days. So you can request that via a case, but the tool in the portal is specifically looking for either register or invite. So it's tracing based on the method, and we do not have subscribe notify as part of that.
All right.
I think that's it.
Awesome. So we
wait,
have...
there's one more about a couple of them here regarding the line trace. Can you enter multiple values separated by commas?
I believe so, David. Right?
Yes, yes. Okay. The line trace, it's doing a string match based on everything that you put in there. So it'll string match, and it's not an and, it's an or. So it's, if you list 3 things, it'll capture on any string match in the SIP messages for any of the 3 that you put in there. Okay. And then the last question that just came in about the LED that indicates the registration status sometimes does not go in sync. So if you're saying in sync with the query registration, you have to remember that our SBC is what's known as a back-to-back user agent. The SBC and the phone maintain a registration, and the SBC and the call server maintain a separate registration. So the registration between the phone and the SBC occurs at most every 3 minutes, and between the SBC and the call server, it's up to an hour, which is why we were saying if you do a forced deregistration, the call server could show no registrations, but the SBC could show it, like the LED in the portal could show it as being registered, because that status is looking at it from an SBC point of view. I'm not sure if that answers that question, but that's one reason why we said don't do it unless you're instructed to do it, because until the SBC sends a new register to the call server, those 2 would be out of sync if you did a forced deregistration.
Great. Thank you, Dave. We do want to also recommend that you guys register for the next webinar that's going to be about our third-party SIP clients that we support, and more details on that. So other than that, I'll hand it back to you, Simon, and we can close shop.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, if you go out to kandy.io/events, we do have these fireside chats scheduled for the rest of this year. So as Sarah mentioned, the next one is going to be on third-party SIP devices, soft clients that we're going to cover. So we've already got a couple that we're going to include in that next webinar. So if that's something that interests you, I would definitely encourage you to go ahead and register. Other than that, I think that covers everything that we wanted to cover today. So we'll go ahead and end the session and give you a couple minutes back.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.